Welcome to Foodkast. Today we have with us Lukasz Lakowski.
Hiya.
Yeah, over 17 years experience, passionate with bread, baking. Well, that's amazing.
Mostly shopping.
Chefing, yes, of course. And what's your weapon of choice today?
Today we're going for Tuscany, Stranamente.
Oh, that's lovely. That's great, chef. Well, as I'm opening, tell us a little bit about you. Like how you start in the kitchen, how your passion for bread and baking came.
So, passion for cooking and baking generally came from early childhood, but like in professional life, I started since I emigrated to Ireland. That would be in 2006.
Wow.
So yeah, a couple of years ago.
And where you're originating from, chef? Which part?
I'm from very popular part at the moment. Everyone talks about those parts of Europe. I'm from the Ukrainian border actually.
Really?
Yes, and I live in the border zone, so I could easily cross the border like without much papers.
Wow.
So it's like 25 kilometers inclusive zone.
Wow. But that is in Poland, right?
Eastern Poland. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. And your cooking experience and your bread passion all came from.
I would say from my closest family, especially from my father and my mother.
Yeah.
I was born in late 80s. Just when the transitions was happening from the communism time to democratic,
Yeah.
and there was lots of products that were not available in the shops, and my parents had it all in their basement, they had it all in their cellars, they had it all in their kitchen. Like they produced everything from the very beginning. Like if our bread would be made from the grains that they had on the farm.
Really?
Yes.
So your experience and your love for bread start in the early ages.
And very early ages. Actually, I wouldn't remember when it started because I would be too young to remember. But like, I think until I finished primary school, I haven't tasted processed bread from the factory.
Really, all made in home.
Everything was made in home.
And the yeast as well made in home, like natural yeast.
We used fermentation process as for starter, but there is slightly different technique in what my parents use back home than what starter is classified as starter here or in UK or in France. So every region have slightly different approach.
What kind of starter you use for your bread? When you grew up?
When I bake here, my starter is very active because especially when I was running my little bakery, I would be baking every day, so I would be feeding my starter twice in 24 hours. So
like
activity,
morning, evening. Yeah.
Yes. The way I would work, I would try to get. When I feed my starter, I would feed it 16 hours before I start baking. So I would feed it, wait 8 hours when it's at its peak.
Yeah.
And then I would feed it again, and I would have, after 16 hours, I could start producing the dough for my bread.
Ooh.
So I would reach 2 peak times, and then I would start production. And then I found that that bread was crazy active. That dough was crazy active. But the way my parents work, because they had to sustain their full-time jobs, the farmers, extremely busy. When I say full-time jobs, it's well over 100 hours they work a week.
Oh yes. People
they would
underestimate farmers.
Exactly.
Yes.
They would bake their bread every 10 or 7 days, and
Whoa.
and that bread would stay fresh, and they wouldn't feed their starter every day. what they would do, they would put their part of the dough that they were producing their breads from, they would cover it in the flour and leave it in the cool temperature, but not in the fridge. They would leave it in the cellar. They would, I call it putting it to sleep.
Oh yeah.
Because they would reduce the amount of moisture that is in the starter. They would slower the fermentation process, so that flour on top, it would be sitting under the flour and would be slowly fermenting it.
Oh, it's
going
just
through
feeding
the
from the
skin.
top. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And in 7 days, when they need that starter back, they would feed it with fresh flour, fresh water. They would rehydrate it. They would let it fermentate, and after 24 hours they would feed it again, and then feed it again, and they would rebuild that hydration and natural processes that are needed to create perfect bread. And then what they would do, they would go kind of like French go with their baguettes.
Yeah.
When they create the starter for the baguette, they mix yeast. They fermentate the yeast for a certain amount of time. They would also fermentate the yeast with a starter and give it another 24 hours to work with.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
they would introduce natural bacteria, and also they would go for yeasts that occur in the process system.
But going back to your childhood and the way the bread was made when you grew up, would it be a heavier bread? Because since the yeast is not so active, wouldn't make so fluffy or worked. Because nowadays, like the let's say the home baked cooks that pandemic create, they used to feed their starch once a week as well, but they keep in the fridge. So literally, you put in a hibernate your starch and leave there for the week, and you take one the night before you're gonna bake, you refeed, and then the following morning you start the process.
Baking. So
yeah, would it be similar?
Would be similar, but it all comes as well to the grains and percentage of water, of hydration that you produce. Like for my part of Poland, where I'm from, it was really popular to have a percentage of wheat flour to the rye flour around 50 or 50 to 60%. So that would make them heavier, as you don't have as much protein to build up this. But if I think about my mother dough itself, it would be much wetter than the most of the doughs that I've seen being produced on different podcasts on YouTube or like home cooks, people who work with the dough. And for example, when they make ciabattas or breads that can incorporate more water in.
Yeah.
Some people go into 110% nowadays. The dough that my parents produce would have cakey filling in it almost.
Oh really?
Yes, because there was a longer fermentation process, so some of the gluten would already break down before we start baking it.
Yeah, and how?
So the breads would be flatter.
Yeah.
They would be sometimes made in the forms.
Yeah, that would
and they
be
wouldn't
my question.
raise that much.
Yeah.
But the process of producing the dough would take somewhere around 70 hours.
Wow.
So that bread was really moist and would stay fresh for over 10 days.
Wow. Wow. And like as you said, you used to use molds sometimes, but what kind of oven you used to use? Is like gas oven, like the ordinary oven you have at home, or would it be something more?
That oven would be okay. They are amateurs, and they just own. That time they owned apartment.
Yeah.
And they had cellar space in the basement, and my father had a builder do brickstone, full size, wooden burn
Oven.
bread oven in the basement.
Wow.
So I was extremely lucky with it.
That
to
was
see experience
fabulous.
of it.
Yes.
Yes, the weekend that we made the bread was special. Like we had to source proper wood that we wanted to use
Yeah.
to cook the bread in. We would also prepare lots of meats that we want to cook or dry fruits in the oven as it would get you if you burn it, if you start using that oven, you wanna get 100% of it. So it wasn't just a bread. We
Yes.
would make something similar to sausage, but we would bake it in the jars. So we would preserve them and we would keep them whole winter.
Cook in the jars.
Yes.
Okay.
So basically,
Because
you have to
like
be very careful because if you go crazy with the temperature, they will
yeah,
break.
because how would be the oven you had? Is it more or less like the pizza oven, sort of, like round, or just
Yes.
the half moon
We
long?
would have squarish
Squarish.
oven
Oh,
with the front door.
yeah.
That would be the main compartment which you would open, start the fire,
Yeah.
and then you would move your ashes to the side,
Yeah.
and then put the bread into main compartment. But we also could open the sides where we had separate compartments where you could dry some food in them.
Like smoke them.
There would be no smoke from the oven going through those side
Oh.
compartments. It would be like you can dry your, I don't know, mint leaves if you like. You can do herbs in it.
Wow.
You could do fruits.
I want an oven like that. I want to buy a pizza oven. You know,
Okay.
like for years now, I want to buy a pizza oven, and I love that. I love because the way you need control your heat, the way it
Yes.
works. Like I work in the pizza oven without thermometer. Just look in the ceiling, you can see, and I can tell you the temperature. And like the wood is something very important. Majority of people don't understand the time the wood dry, for how long it dries, etc. That's important, and the flavor bring to the food. Pizza oven, you don't feel that smokiness because of the heat. Normally go about 450 to 550, depending how you want to control it. 450, I think, is too low. Do not cook the base well. I prefer around 5 to 520, around there. Anything above 550 cooks too fast, in my opinion. Yeah, my
That's a great
My
point. That's a
just
great
my
point
opinion.
on the wood.
But there are people, like, sometimes don't understand. If you get, they wouldn't need to dry between. I think 1 year, few months is okay. Anything above year and a half, they would start to get too light and burn too quick, and then give your peak, and then falls quick. But if it's too young, you could correct me. Probably you know that probably be way better than I do. When it's too young, 12 months or
Gives too much
below,
juices.
yeah, it's too hard. So do not burn, and then one burn is just going in one peak, boom.
Yes.
And
Oils in the
yes, so it's very difficult to understand, and then you can feel in the hands, yeah.
weight by
The weight. What kind of wood is your favorite wood? And normally, I would say what's locally, but as I say,
was very locally.
Yeah.
The thing about the wood and the temperatures that you burn, I give you a great example from my primary school, because in my class there was a boy whose parents went exactly the same way, and when we brought our sandwiches to school, his bread would be his sandwich would be burned from the top as hell,
oh,
and because they use nice wood, it would be delicious. I would always
really?
ask for his skin, the burnt skin.
It's the best.
Yes.
Oh God!
And even if you think, oh, they don't know what they're doing, their skin is so much worse. The moment we open our lunch boxes, you're like, "Here, have that bread today." So
And
that
it was
amazing.
it was more sourdough or the balance, because people don't understand the sour. Why you get the sour?
Lactic acid bacteria in the
Yeah.
in the sourdough the way it works, if you constantly feed your starter the way that I mentioned before, like 8 hours and 8 hours, the bacteria will not have time to produce the lactic acid.
Mm-hmm.
So you will not get that sourness yet.
Yeah.
But then, if you leave the ready product in a cool environment, so for example, modern times in the fridge, or like it used to be in the cellar, where you can expect something in between 13 to 14, 15 degree, depends on the time of the year.
Yeah.
You can slow down the process of fermentation and not have that much sourness into your dough without adding sugars.
Yes. I never add sugar in my bread.
That's very good.
Like no, when I'm baking, I heard before, but I thought that was just because a company, like normally the companies you buy in the high street, they will put that. It's just because your starch is not ready there, so you need to. It's like bees. When you want them to produce more honey, you can throw sugar in the hive.
Basically, it's cheating.
It's cheating, and I don't like even pressure cooker. Is amazing, right? But I don't use pressure cooker. I hate it because I feel like it's cheating.
Yes, I think like within the sugar with a bread, it's not just a cheat. It goes against our body.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have sugar in the bread, your brain gonna tell you that this bread is good.
Yes.
So you're gonna taste the sweetness, and maybe you're not gonna see the difference between good bread, which is produced over a long period of time, and the bread that is nice and fluffy and have the same characteristics in taste. But what's happening actually is that the grain, the flour, was not fully fermented. So
yeah.
the processes that doing the most of the job for your body, because we were not designed to eat grains.
Yes.
If we keep eating grains, we will get health issues, and the way that we produce the sourdough is we make that grain ready to be consumed by a human stomach. And if you add sugar, if you actually cut the process of fermentation, you're making product that everyone loves, something that shouldn't be consumed.
I truly believe, like now with gluten intolerance, about like 50 years ago, you didn't have much people complaining about it. Okay,
Yes.
they had the symptoms, but they never realized. It's like with lactose. And it's just like people start to narrow down and start to understand. But I truly believe it's because of the bread, is the way we're processing. Back when you grew up, you used to grind your own wheat.
Yes, wheat and rye flour. We didn't grind, like we took my father would take the grains, would bring it to the place, they would grind for him, and then he would brought it back. He would sell a lot of it because it was, as we say, hot buns coming, and he would leave something for us to have it over the certain period of time, and then he would go again, and the process would
because the grain is dry and live in the cellar and just process as you need. You don't do that to gather too much moisture, and then you end up literally fermenting everything you have.
Storage.
Yes, and so that was a big part for you. So grow up with bread. So that's where your passion come, right?
Exactly.
And then like, except my grandma, she used to have her own starch for her breads at home. For me, Sunday was the most special day. You go there, we would have pasta. The grown-ups would have like wine with like olive oil, aceto balsamico, balsamic vinegar, yes, and then a little bit salt, sea salt, and then you just go with the bread. Oh my God, it's kind of book, like it's in this book here, like for who is listening, not watching at the moment, Lukasz brought a couple of books, and one of them has a beautiful bread in the cover, and I wish I had that bread here with a little bit of olive oil and balsamico and just eating. Oh my god, that looks amazing. So, what's your favorite way to cook your bread? Is like in the stone or in forms or the Dutch oven in the pot? Like myself, since I don't have like a proper oven at home, I use the pot because cast iron. You put in the oven, 300 degrees. The oven or the maximum your oven can go like mine is 260. That's what the dials say, but I know get around 220 to 40 because leak heat. But if you leave there the cast iron for at least here at home for about 2 hours in the full heat, and take it off and then put the things in bake, I get a nice bread. That's my only way. How did you start to bake? Apart of in Poland, when you're in your parent house, they have amazing oven that nowadays is just like a chef's dream to have. Uh, how you start to adapt and get your recipe ready? And another question on top of that is, did you get the your
Starter.
starter from back home, or you start a new one here in Ireland?
So I would start with the starter. um, I was thinking about bringing back a starter from Poland or from my parents at the moment. They stopped producing that bread. At their um, they already retired and they had their bit of work done. And they went for convenient type of living. Like they don't even have energy to mix that bread anymore, and there's no one around to eat that in those quantities anymore.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
the house isn't full anymore, so they give up. Unfortunately, they still remember the taste, but it's a bit of work as well.
No, they pass
It's a
that to you now.
commitment.
Yeah, yeah. When
Exactly.
Lucas comes over, he will make the bread. Yeah.
Oh, I'm there in 2 weeks, so they already told me to bring the starter. um, I, I I spent lots of time educating myself, especially during the COVID time, about a different approach to bread around the world.
Yeah.
And what's I found in my research is that even if I brought that starter here, basically it's not just about having those bacteria from there, but it's about what I'm feeding that starter with.
Yes, correct.
Because if I bring a starter that has specific amount of bacteria and fungus in it, and I start to feed it with different flour than they would feed it,
You could
the
kill it.
starter would change um, would change completely.
Yeah.
That starter would just become the starter made from the flour that is here, that the starter that I'm feeding it with.
It's more or less like honey. Honey you eat from local source, not
Yes.
a honey came from like the Himalayas, because those bees eat the things were around your environment, and they will give you the vitamins and the good stuff from that area, not from where you need. So it's more or less that what you're trying to say.
Vanessa Kimball explains that subject very well when she went to the extent of checking in laboratory actually her guts to check how much resemble there is between her starter flowers that she feeding the starters with actually bacteria that are in her body because she's eating that bread.
All right.
So that's really interesting. This is like totally almost on spiritual level of connection with the bread.
But that's clever, because sometimes people they take for granted, like
You are what you eat.
yeah, you are what you eat. I do understand, like let's eat organic local products is expensive, isn't cheap, but if you treat yourself majority of the time the food and bring something good to you will make difference in your body. Like here at home all the girls are lactose intolerant, Like Carolina used to love her cheese. We used to go to a farmer's market once a week to buy local cheese. Was quite expensive, but it was a treat for
Treat.
us. But we that's what we would eat throughout the week. And then when we eat, it's not just to eat for the sake of feed yourself. It's something to uh, nurture and make you happy. And the problem for her was sometimes, let's say a pizza, she could give one bite and get sick all night, and sometimes she could eat a full pizza and she was fine. And nowadays I see people eating bread and they just feed themselves just to stuff themselves, and they don't get that anymore, and they don't understand how good it's for your guts to have something properly done. And do you think we are going back to the roots? Because 10 years ago was all about globalization. That means if you want to eat strawberry all around throughout all the year, you're gonna have strawberries. Instead
Yes.
of have like seasons and understand what's in season. Um,
I've seen it a lot in the restaurants, especially when I was asked to do the special or to put something in the menu, and I would say, um, no, I'm not doing that today. Like, just turn back and go away from me. Like, I'm not putting pears now, or I'm not putting strawberries, as you said,
yeah,
or I'm not doing that bird because it's not the time for it.
yeah, yeah. No, I totally understand. Like now, the restaurants like now as we're recording, we are going to the winter, and here in Ireland we have quotes for the fishermen. And what I'm thinking about to guide all the head chefs is don't use X, Y, Z because they're out of season. And then use salmon. Ah, but salmon is not in season. Okay, it's not. But like we have farms, and they farm a lot for for the summer. So now they have a overflow of fish. So let's celebrate what they have the overflow and cheaper product, local, etc., etc. But like going back to bread, what's the best time of the year to get the grains? Because like you understand the grains better than I do, and like clearly you know you grew up with that, like, and you have the seasons as well. So you harvest around end of summer, correct?
August.
August. All right. Yeah. So just about the end, correct? August is still in the peak of summer. Yeah.
Um, Depends on the country in around Europe and UK.
Yeah, but
Some harvesting
yeah.
can start even early August, or if you have winter crops, you can start even before the start of the August.
Mm.
So depends on the summers, but like
And then
in the continental Europe,
yeah.
it's often really depending on how the spring was, how was the winter, and then
And
it can start.
in the farm your parents have it was August, and then you had a winter crop, or not, or you just prepare the soil for the next year.
So by winter grain, I mean that grain would be seeded after harvest.
Yes.
So it would go um, in September, maybe early or late August. The grain would go to the ground and would sprout there, would be visible, and then the cold weather would come in, and then
The
eventually it would
blanket.
cover with snow.
Yeah. Would it be the same variety, or would it be a different kind of grain to resist the snow and the winter?
Would be slightly different, but there would be no problem with resisting
The cold.
the cold. It's actually better for us if we have the the grain growing over the winter. And the reason for this is you get um, extra few months for that grain to grow, which slows down the process again. Because, as you said, with the gluten problems, they only appear in the last 50 years, and actually they started appearing after Second World War, when we changed the process of farming and producing the grains. As before the Second World War, every crops that we produced were either not fertilized or were naturally fertilized. And when the Second World War finished, in especially in Germany, there was lots of chemical products left, which were factories were supplying the armies,
Yeah.
and the product left over, nitrogen, was used to boost production of farms which were lacking investments, and there was lots of people disappear from the war because of the war. So there had to be lots of grain produced, and there were no hands to produce it. So they came up with use of nitrogen left over from weapon factories, and they put it into the ground. And what they did, they speed up the process of, and they increase
More oxygen in the soil. That means we'll have more. The grains will grow quicker.
faster and bigger.
Yeah.
And what's happened, it actually changed the characteristic of the grain itself
And as
and
well,
harden it. And that's one of the reasons why it's harder
Yeah.
for us to actually eat the grain at the moment.
because the grain got harder, basically.
That's shortcuts in
Yeah,
my
like
explanation, yes.
for dumb people like me. Yeah.
Or myself, I wouldn't be able to give you chemical characteristics,
Yeah.
but,
But it changed the characteristics of the grain.
it grew too fast, it grew too big, and it's inappropriate to it. So often when we talk about people with dietary problems, they are using the grains that are not produced in the mass scale with the fertilizer, and usually those people can eat the breads which are produced from the ancient grains,
Yes. Yeah.
which are not as rich in gluten as nowadays breads.
So, what do you get in the bread now and the grains? Do you think getting grains from different countries or for different places it makes difference as well in the quality of bread? What's the best like when you had your bakery? What was your where you used to get your grain locally? You import from somewhere else because example for pizza. You make pizza, everyone said no, it need to be 00 from Italy.
Italian.
Yeah, and then it's like I think it's a little bit
The Roma.
pretentious, a little bit pretentious in that way.
To be honest, I don't have set rules. I use what I like.
And what do you like?
I really like the there was a small family-run mill in Kilkenny, and I used their flour. It was stone ground, proper flour. I really love it.
Ooh.
That was for my roy flour, and for the for the strong flour, the wheat flour, for most of the time I would actually get it from France. And the reason behind
yeah.
this is that France was one of the first countries who banned use of Roundup as pesticide killer, and that was like, for me it was like a green light straight away. I want to go somewhere where I know that they have huge tradition of breads. They're so proud of the bread that I wouldn't even show them my bread, I think. And
I saw your breads.
and this culture was always around farming, and
Yeah.
the flour itself is great quality.
Because like the let's use the vague term as bleaching. The farming in America, in my opinion, their flour is more bleached, let's say, compared with Europeans. But comparing with the products here in Europe, you still think like the French one is ahead of the game?
It might sound kinky, but it was even nicer to touch. so creamy. The way it absorbed water. I tested couple of different grains, and actually, to my surprise, Ireland is not producing that much uh, consumption flour as they producing more grain for animal feed.
Oh yes, yeah.
So maybe not everyone knows, but like most of the bread that we get in here is actually produced from the UK flour or continental flour. So when I was looking for flours, I found that actually to access strong white flour straight from the source wouldn't be that easy, because most of the Irish mills actually mixing their flours, they wouldn't be able to tell me what's the name of the farmer that produced that flour.
Oh yeah.
So, because that would be coming from somewhere.
Why? Why? Like the demand, clearly there is demand because Irish people love their bread. Okay, it's not the best. It's not like artisanal as you baked, but I think it's growing in the Irish market. And then after the pandemic, when everyone started to bake at home, even like some monstrosities, people start to realize the work behind, and they're being more proud of
Of course.
get a homemade, let's say, bread than actually buying your ordinary sliced bread. So
We should find the name for bread and for that product in the supermarket.
oh yes. Like did you feel difference between the pandemic before and after the for people looking for bread?
Um, I would say that yes, the awareness is growing, but I think it's not just with the bread. It's about food industry and our health, and as we live longer and as we're trying to get healthier,
Yeah.
people actually realizing that it comes in pair with what you eat with your food. So maybe pandemic had its part in it, but I think it's a process which just keeps happening.
And like now with the uh, leave solo from bread, I would say is almost impossible. There is a place in Grand Canal in Dublin called Il Valentino. Probably you heard before.
Oh yes,
Yes.
I had the bread.
Yes. How you would rate their bread compared with yours or
I would
any other?
I would never compare breads, because I think it's a it's something that been in someone's hands, and someone puts certain thought into it. And
Yeah.
even if I was going to compare it, I would compare it from my experience rather than understand what's the thinking behind the bread.
Yeah.
Because, like, I give you example. I was very small scale, so I come up with the recipe, and I make my proportions of the flours and where the flour's coming from and the moisture at certain time of the year. And 3 months later, I cannot look at the bread. I'm like, why did I come up with this? What was in my head? But it just what happens is just a few months pass. You get different weather, so we get different temperature of baking. You get different moisture in the air, and there are
Correct.
different bacteria and fungi growing at different time in your bread. So you like, it's a different product after 3 months. Even the recipe is the same.
Yes, I agree. I think that's the biggest challenge people don't understand. The season can affect your bread, and nonetheless, what I'm trying to say here about the bakery and what I went to you Valentino. I used to live there about 12 years ago in Grand Canal, 10 years ago. I don't know. I'm getting old. I'm forgetting the time. I know it's more than 10 years. And when they opened there, I used to buy my bread there. I love it. I love it because it was a proper bread. Back home, we have bakeries everywhere. And then you have
Yes.
your bread. And like in Sao Paulo, we have like a little, it's bigger than a petit pan. It's about 100 grams, 120 grams petit pan. So it's a massive petit pan, right?
Beautiful.
And they're fluffy, they're crispy, it's just right. Every hour from 6 in the morning to 8 p.m. or 7 p.m., I don't recall anymore, they bake a fresh batch. And people, yes. And then before you go home, you go buy that and you eat. It's literally for your sandwich, whatever you want to do it. And I recall going to bakeries just for that. But like that's the signature bread, and they have the other kind of breads. But here in Ireland, you don't have much of that. In France, yes, you can live solo selling only breads. You go to a place, it's a bakery, just breads, you buy, get out. Here is very challenging. The last time I went to Valentino, become more as a not bakery,
sweet shop.
Yes, it's a mix of coffee, bread, and other things because
Pastries.
yeah, pastries. You have everything.
Sandwiches.
Your focaccias, and I said, oh, it's a little bit sad to see they can't live from bread only, but on the other hand, they succeed doing what they're doing now. Thanks God, because there's not much places you can go around. I don't know many places do the same as you Valentino, and probably you felt the same difficult in your trade.
I used to work very close to Il Valentino, and that would be treat for myself. If I get a chance to get a break, I would just go there and
break.
Yes, from work.
You work as a chef.
Yes. So I would treat myself sometimes.
You had breaks.
Yes.
Oh my god.
So
that's rare for chefs, breaks. Yes.
They happen on the split shifts.
That's what they call those days, yeah. Yes. Go for a break for half an hour, yeah.
Yes. And come back for another 8 hours.
Yeah, so sorry to interrupt you.
I would go there, sit with wherever I felt like. If it's a bun, if it's I wouldn't buy bread because you can't eat the whole bread.
You would not go back to work, yeah.
So, and I would sit there for 20 minutes and just look at the customers purchasing stuff, and yes, I would barely see anyone walking out with a baguette or with a bread. It would be majority of pastries, of a croissant, of chocolate buns or flavored buns, but to find someone walking out from the bakery with the bread wouldn't happen.
Wow, that's it's very challenging to see it. I remember in Microsoft, the company I used to work before, they had a bakery.
Yes.
And they make their own bread, and how they call it, the thing you put on top to create the signs, or like the flour, like this how they call the thing to put on top, like the flour and make like a symbol or something like that. Stains? No, it's not stain.
When you cut the bread, it's called scoring.
Yeah, there's the scoring, and then you have when you just sprinkle flour on top. How they call that?
I actually wouldn't know that term.
Yeah. Anyway, in Microsoft, they made one with Microsoft logo and written Microsoft. So they used to do that, and they sell for, I think it was $250 or $280 for a full loaf.
Yes.
And then they make about 20-30 a day, and they have 5,000 people in the building, to make sure people before they go home they can go there in the bakery and purchase their bread to bring home.
So what's percentage that leaves you?
Nothing.
0.0.
No, the problem there in Microsoft, is not about money. It's what they want to make sure the experience their guests or their staff will have. So it's not about making profit on that. It's more about make sure they can get something good with value.
But if you think about the numbers, out of 5,000, you sell 20.
Yeah. I could say something wrong. I could call Kevin and ask, but in my view, probably that's what they made a day. I spent there a few times, just pop in and out. I can't tell you exactly, but the way numbers. I see is probably it's about 20, 30. Even they make 100.
If that factory was in France,
100 breads for 5,000 people. Are you kidding me? It's not even percent. Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah, yes, that's my point.
But at the same time, things change because when I when I see small bakeries around like Rathmines, Portobello, or going to the south side, unfortunately, it's happening more in the south side of Dublin. Like
Yeah.
it comes with a price. The
There's a price tag,
delivery,
yes.
um, I can. There are places now which sell out when from their morning bake, and they close early because they actually sell out all the products that they could produce that day. So it's coming, it's coming. And hopefully it's accelerate faster, but within changes in the global economic, it's hard to say how it's gonna turn out now.
You think they will die because the let's say recession coming? Because people believe is a recession coming.
Yes.
The global market is slowing down. China is not the powerhouse it used to be before. So like the things will slow down, but I don't see as that negative or bad. The things can't be like the way it was in the beginning 2000s, and like don't stop. You have limitations. As Elon Musk said a time ago, the problem in the world is not overpopulation. We are underpopulated, and I don't I understand now because after the pandemic, people disappear. I feel like people disappear. Like you can't buy a computer without calling for a month ahead. Like
Yes.
like in the 80s, you can't have anything anymore. Like I ordered a freezer 2 months ago. Is arriving just today in one of the restaurants because they didn't have the people to build, etc. I think people disappear in the world and we didn't notice. Okay, they move areas. I don't know which area. I would love to know because some area is overflowing with people. But what I'm trying to say here is now with that slowdown, I think in Ireland we will not feel much because Ireland is a small country. Um, Even in the recession, wasn't that bad. Like the difference is between any recession before is people is still hungry for people to work. So
Understand
the,
that.
the market is literally we need people in. Just the other parts of the economy will show as a recession. It makes sense to you. So the everything will slow down. A part of we need people in to make sure we can produce the things. Do you think that will affect the small producers?
Um, yes, I'm one of the examples. I've run my micro bakery for very short time as a war in Ukraine happened and just effect it had on the prices of flour. It it just knocked me off the rails
Really?
because the idea of my micro bakery done from the small extension kitchen,
Yeah.
serving just for the neighborhood, would only work if I can make profit on the small scale operation.
It's very challenging, yeah.
When I was coming with ideas for the bakery, it wasn't, but in between, the whole economy was interrupted by Mr. Putin, and uh, my my business plan went to the bin in one day.
Wow.
It's just like one of the first messages that you hear from the Ukrainian war in February was Ukraine is the biggest producer of grain in Europe.
Not in Europe, in the world. 40% of all wheat produced in the world has come from there.
Exactly.
It's not even like Brazil or US would challenge them
And I was
or
hoping that
replace them.
I was hoping like that's not gonna affect maybe our part of the world, but like if any part of the world cannot access Ukrainian grain, that means they have to buy from the different market.
Yes.
So there is if there is a need, the price goes up.
Like as welcome the global warming on that, yeah. I will give you an example of corn. Like now, let's come back to Ireland. Many years ago, fine corn, fresh corn for Ireland, Irish produce, was literally like, what? Corn in Ireland? No. Like I used to have my allotment, and the corn grows like about like 10, 15 centimeters, and I look at that, that's not corn, like, and a year ago, yeah, over a year ago, last summer, I got one of the producers, farmers, used to come to the hotel I used to work, and the guy came with a basket with corn. I said, "Can you do anything with that?" I plant a couple of hectares with that. I said, "Wow, yes, give it to me." In Brazil, like we do a lot of things with corn, like in America. And I said, "No, no, bring as much as you can." So I did corn a lot. I did desserts with that. I did everything. Do you think because of that and the craving of the Irish market for grains? Because like in the end of the day, wheat is not hard to produce and harvest. And as well, like now with the prices of animal protein soaring as a all-time high, I start to notice people thinking about it, what I'm gonna eat. Good example you can see straight in your face is like Burger King in the ads in the radio saying, literally promoting their plant-based instead of their burgers, and that's massive. Do you think people will change their mentality, their farmers, local farmers, and seeing that ahead in the curve and say, I'm gonna feed my people, or I'm gonna start to plant actually wheat instead of planting animal feed, because that will give me more profit, because the farmers actually grow their animals to sell. They make it like a razor thin margin in the end of the day,
Yes.
and you're just feeding them.
I'm coming
You know,
from the farmer's background, as my
yeah,
parents were farmers, and the thing about uh, politics and global warming or farming is that when we see need for change, we can make decisions straight away. You go to the shop and you decide, okay, on Mondays I'm not eating beef. On Tuesdays I eat turkey. Maybe I'm gonna treat myself for a steak on the weekend.
yeah,
But uh, to give you example of a farmer, it's like you deciding to start your farm at a very early age because it takes whole your life to build it. So let's say you are 18 in 90s, and you
yeah,
off the school, and you gonna inherit it, or you gonna take a loan and buy a farm, and you're gonna make decision what's you gonna grow on your farm. And to sustain production, you actually have to take huge loans.
yes,
You're gonna buy machines which are specific for your production. You're gonna build all the buildings if it's for pig production, if it's for storage of vegetables and process of vegetables, if it's for production of the beef. So from our perspective, we can make decision in 5 minutes in the shop. But to tell farmer who have 40-year loan,
oh yes, they think like a hotel, yeah,
yes,
like they buy the property and they have like a lease for 20 years. So that's what they think. Oh, I just bought that equipment 3 years ago. I still have now 17 years to pay. Or sometimes they're in the cooperative. That is the same style, but okay, the price is not like I'm buying like 100,000 equipment. I'm buying like 10 equipments together with the other farmers. It's more or less like that.
typically yes, because when there were farmers striking on Marion Square, you could see the comments on internet. Or there's someone striking on his John Deere worth 1.5 million,
Yeah,
and he because he doesn't want to go off the beef. But that person probably will not pay that John Deere tractor and all the equipment until he's on he's 65.
yeah. When he retire, yeah,
Yes, like some of those people, they don't really have a choice of restructuring their farm because it takes time and it takes money. And if we're not providing them with time and we're not providing them with the money, they have no option and they get frustrated with it. But this is probably different podcast
no, no,
subject.
we're in the right place. We're talking about food in the end of the day, and
Yeah.
what influenced the food. Um, I truly believe we as consumers are the first step. If we stop to eat, as you said, like North Dublin, South Dublin, and West Dublin. I put in three parts Dublin. I see North and West is quite similar. They will not change much overnight. There are a few pockets areas in those areas will change overnight to actually would eat a let's say gourmet bread or like a more sustainable bread as you made. And South, they do that. Here in the South of Dublin, we have more conscious about the food probably, but if we stop to eat less meat and gradually change our habits, I think that will affect in some stage. They will look as I'm making less and less profit selling beef. So the way I see is more or less something I already said here in the
Organic,
podcast
natural
before.
process.
Yeah, like something I said here in the podcast before is we eat vegan at home, and it was my fault. Okay, I would not say fully vegan because we still get like 6 eggs every week from a neighbor up the road. She has happy hens, let's say like that. She started to grow her own hens to get her needs for eggs because she didn't want to have eggs anymore bought from the shop. And suddenly she got in a dilemma. She got more eggs than she could eat.
That's not a problem.
She put she put in the forum here in the neighborhood in the Facebook, and then people start to you need to get listed to get eggs, and then after you get listed and you can get the surplus eggs that people already not sign in. We finally got a few years ago we got sign in. So every Tuesday we need to go there and get our eggs.
Collect your eggs.
Yeah, and in theory we didn't need to pay, but she said, look, just for contribution you give what you want. We say X is enough, and I'll tell you, it's great because you get like beautiful organic eggs. The hens running her garden, destroying her garden. I wouldn't say that because I wouldn't put in my grass there. I like my grass to look like a golf course, Anyway, and we get our eggs in the house, but like basically a part of that, we eat fully vegan. My point here is, if ever, my idea before was to go to Japanese diet, where the meat is just a side for us, for the Western culture, that the meat is the main, and then the rest around the plate is the sides. In the Japanese, the opposite. Everything else is the main, and the meat is the side. It's something just to make sure your palate bring to the next level. And since then, I start to think about the food in a different way. It's not put a massive 16-ounce T-bone in your plate and say, wow, that's your dinner there. No, you make that to communicate with the food. And if you see, the protein start to shrink in the plate the past few years. The only protein you can see that more than anyone else is chicken. If 5 years ago, when you go to your restaurants you worked before and you ask for the case, like one case of chicken, you will come 50 breasts, right? 25 per case.
20 per case.
20, yeah.
Also for supremes.
Yeah, no, 20 is for supremes, right? Yeah, and 25 for the chicken breast. They were bigger. They used to be 5 ounces. Now it's 4 to 5. But the beef, I went to the supplier a few days back, and I asked them why the T-bone 16 ounce look like a 10 ounce, but very thick. And they said, oh, because we are getting the animal put in the slaughterhouse when it is younger. We used to put at 26 weeks, at 26 months. Now we're putting at 20 odd months. So they're not going the right time anymore. They're shrinking the animal as well because we are not consuming the way you used to consume before.
The change appears so fast.
Yes. So I think it's a good sign in the way of people are changing their mentality, and they are slow going to. It's not fast food. They slow cook now. I think we are going back to the roots. We went to the globalization. You can have avocado any time of the year, bananas, whatever, in any time of the year. And people start to realize going back to the roots. I remember Christmas time was the only time we could have plums in Brazil, and I love it. Now, anytime I want a plum, I go to the supermarket and get it. And it's losing that. Do you think we'll go back?
I think there is that we went back already in some perspective. I think there is there's space on the market for people who want to go back to it, and that space is growing constantly. But I don't think it will happen in full scale.
Oh, no, no, definitely not. Because it's good to be in a globalization when you want to eat something. But
Yes,
let's say strawberries here is early March. No, March. No, wait. No, early summer, right? May. Around May is the. No, that's a problem to drink when you're doing an interview because you forget
from
stuff.
from the greenhouses it started in May, and then early May
Yeah.
or late April, and then wax for its end of May and June.
Yeah. So I understand in those months the price drops, and off the months the price goes up. The only place I still feel that when you see it, try to check that when you're placing orders. Green beans, fresh, not frozen, fresh. Because early in the year, when it's harvest, would be from Spain,
And then
and
it moves to
later,
Africa.
correct. So I love that, and then I like to tell the story in the menus. Tell people what you're eating, and then pass that to the servers and to my head chefs and say, look, get this because that's in season. And tell the story to your guests. Say where your product come from. Be proud of the food. It's something I don't see anymore. That apart of fine dining, of course, because you have the price and people want to hear what you're doing. But like for your ordinary people, like me and you, going to a restaurant, they said you go there and to McDonald's say, can I have Big Mac? We don't have. Why? It's out of season.
It's
It
gonna
will not
happen.
happen. I know, but you know what I mean.
Of course.
Like, but the ordinary restaurant, if it start to happen something like that, like it's surreal.
It's
Just to
like
think.
it's like when you look at the menu writing, every single restaurant have a certain amount of the dishes that they comfortable to serve. So you have restaurant that will serve 16 main courses, and you will have a restaurant that serves 8 dishes.
Yeah.
But their numbers don't change with season.
Yeah.
There isn't a restaurant that sells 12 dishes in the winter and then goes down in the summer where they have different product, or where they sell lighter salads, or in the spring where they have less available product. There will still same amount of dishes in the menu, because that's the policy of the place, every single place,
Yeah.
everywhere. So even though we do tweaks in the menu with the dishes, we still we don't fully appreciate the year, and we don't feast in the winter when we have heavier dishes and maybe bigger selection of winter veg and stuff like that. Our menus are actually set, even though we think we work with the season.
Yeah, I do understand, but that would be the part of the chefs in the restaurants to look after that.
Creativity.
Yes. One of the things I'm putting in one of the restaurants there, what I put in the menu? Yeah, I call, no, how I call? No, it's Baba Bitterballen. That's the ghost cheese. The other one is Lamb Bitterballen. It's like a croquette, but from Netherlands. You instead of you put potato, you make with a roux, very thick roux,
Yes.
and then you mix with the lamb and go. But in my head is like people have that.
Is it Dutch dish?
Yes, you have that mentality. People think about lamb is a winter dish. but I disagree. It's a spring dish. Because if you get lamb in the spring, it's nice, sweet, like you can feel here
Spring
in the
lamb.
back. Yeah, it's perfect. But if you get a lamb in the winter, it's gamey. It's like that meaty, old meat flavor in your mouth. Get in the beginning here in the front of your the mouth. Sorry, that's my brain working when I'm trying to remember about flavors, and I dislike. Nevertheless, now is the moment to use the old lamb. And what cut works well in the old lamb? Shank, in my opinion.
On the sourdough on the side of the sauce.
So I got that to get you braise the shit of it, and after that you make a shoe. You shred it, the shank and make little balls, you know. But like now you said about the sourdough and seeing that picture of sourdough here, I would eat all night with that.
And I actually didn't bring any.
Yeah, I should actually say, like you should bring a bread. Oh no, no, that wouldn't be good because I would not talk at all.
Yeah.
I would be just eating. So like your sour, like you still feed your starter, or you stop and left aside.
I have my starter in the fridge now, so it's I don't have to feed it as often.
Yeah.
I turn it into like amateur home cook starter, which just is looked after from time to time when it's needed. It to be called to service.
But it's good because you keep the flavor just mature more and more.
Um, yes, and it's not that hard to refresh your starter. Like I before I didn't have to have a separate starter in the fridge because I was feeding it so often that if I decide I'm not baking bread on Sunday, I would just not feed it
Just
for
leave
a
it in the
day,
bench. Yeah.
and then wherever I need to, I would feed it back. But if I decide I want to do the bread in 5 days, I would just take half of it from the fridge and start feeding it. First, I would do feed in 24 hours. Then I would reduce it to 16. Then I would go to 12 hours maybe. Then I would go to 8 hours, and I would make my dough.
Talk about that. What do you do with the over? Let's say you still baking at home for yourself.
From time to time, yes.
Yeah. And what do you do with the starter that you don't use? Because you don't use how much starter you keep like at all times? Half liter or like 500
Even
grams?
less. I can go to. I wouldn't be comfortable with 100 grams because maybe I don't know. Maybe in the container that I would store it, maybe there would be residues of washing liquids, or maybe I would dry the container with the towel that was washed, and somehow some chemical would affect
Starter.
my starter. So I wouldn't go any lower than 100 grams that I would preserve. But usually, what I do, or what I did when I ran the little bakery, I would go to mathematics and calculate how many grams I need in, for example, 3 days, and then I would actually get my starter to be at the weight that when I make when I produce my dough for the bread, I would have enough starter left to produce another starter in next day for the bread. So we would actually never in perfect world I would never have to throw away the starter. I would just use leftover and feed it the way that I would have enough for the next batch.
That's interesting. Like my math always was 50-50. You take half, you put half. And when I was here in the pandemic, I was feeding daily, twice a day.
And it was growing.
Yes.
It was growing.
Yes.
It was
But it
growing.
wasn't sour enough. I left for 20 days before I made a bread. And it wasn't sour enough. I like when you have that sourness in the back, like it's nice. And what I used to do with that 50%, I was literally throwing the bean. Let's say I was making pancakes. Have you ever tried before?
Sourdough pancakes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's lovely. You put
Uh, it's
any
not,
kind of
and buttermilk and sourdough.
meat. You put meat. Yeah, I can't say that loud.
Okay.
Put some meat, and then you saute your onions, everything, and you put that sourdough. Oh my god! And spring onions in the end. Lukasz, I
And
swear to God, it was amazing. I'm
um,
salivating now. I need sourdough bread now.
this author Vanessa Kimball came up with the whole recipe book of sweet treats made from sourdough.
Really? Is in
Yes.
this book or in a
No,
different book?
this book is just she's talking about her school, how she got into the sourdough and her life experience, and then
Can
she
see the
goes
pictures.
into lots of recipes for the breads, but her experiments are
Who's the person who
massive.
inspire you the most for to be a baker?
That would come down to my mom.
Yeah.
I, um, I remember being maybe 6, and she would make dumplings. And when she was making dumplings,
Like
she would
pierogi.
pierogi.
All right. Yeah.
She
Yeah.
would cut round shapes. She used glass. She didn't have a dough
Yeah,
cutter.
yeah.
She would use glass to make round shape to 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 make her pierogi. And what she did, the classical Polish pierogi dough, there is no eggs. There's warm water. There's a little bit of steam and a flour, and it's very simple. So she would allow me to cut like with a shot glass, smaller round shapes, and she would allow me to bake them in different ways. So like I could throw them in the water with her pierogi, so that would be boiled dough,
Yeah.
and then she would allow me to put them on the top of the stove, and I would get like little tortillas. And then she would allow me, when she was baking stuff, she would allow me to put it in the oven, and I would see how the same recipe just changing
Different ways. Yes.
different ways, and that would be, it wouldn't be waste product. Like I would still taste it, and like, but there was nothing into it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. 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 I know.
The dough wasn't fermented. There was no salt, because like water was salted for pierogi, so the salt would be absorbed in the
Yeah.
process of boiling. But like just being curious about the elements and the way they work, and then it would go the same way for every single product. Like she was so creative. She and she had huge old, like before World War, orchard,
Mhm.
which wasn't far away from our apartment, and there would be like all types of trees. Like we would have maybe 6 different varieties of apples and 5 different varieties of plums, different types of cherries, mirabelles, pears, uh, fruits that I never seen in the market. They disappeared. They just gone. And what she did, she would use every single tree in that orchard for different purpose. If you go to her cellar, it would be just huge wall of jars, and every single jar had different color because it was used with different fruits, and that was just amazing.
And
Biggest experience.
now,
food
now
experience.
you just said something reminds me a lot of Polish people in that sense. Pickling.
Pickling. Yes.
How is pickling going to your breads? You do flavor breads with pickle fruit or pickle anything, vegetables?
Quick answer: no.
No.
It's a separate part of the plate. Like we have our pickles and they're done that way, and we have our bread is done different way.
You wouldn't add on your breads.
No,
Like
it's
the
a bit
Italians
like,
do. Like they put cheese, they put their tomato, but tomato I know is coming after many years. In my opinion, like I put me as Italian, but like Italians per se, they got all the influence they got around from Syria, from America, and make their pizzas, they make their focaccias, their breads, and I think it's very inventive, the Italian cuisine that way, because they observe what comes to their culture. And nowadays we see as Italian food, but when you start to look in depth, like half of the products in Italian cuisine didn't come from Italian cuisine.
They absorb it very fast
Yes.
and master it.
Yes. So, would you involved any of your pickling to your breads, or you think that's just like no? They need to be separate.
I'd be like a really, really old Italian grandma, which would just snap my fingers for touching it.
Don't touch my bread.
Yeah. I've experimented a lot, but there's something in my DNA going back to the years where bread was bread, and what you put on the bread had to be good quality.
And what's your favorite bread to bake? Type, like a sourdough or baguette, brioche. You do brioche.
I've done brioche not within my micro bakery. I mean, I've done it for family and stuff like that, but before I use it at work, like I've baked brioche in few places for restaurant use, but it was a bit expensive to do the brioche.
It is.
People don't understand how much proper brioche should cost, as it contains 50% of butter and lots of eggs.
I don't understand how cheap can be brioche. The ones we buy, the high street ones for the restaurants.
It's made with oil.
Yeah, I do know. It's like mayonnaise. Mayonnaise,
Yes.
if you do at home, you use 3 yolks for 1 liter of oil. You have beautiful mayonnaise, yeah? And you know Hellmann's
Yes.
is 1 yolk for 24 liters of oil.
Yeah, it's probably
I don't know how they emulsify the shit of it. Yeah,
That's the thing.
how? Yeah, I know that. Yeah, don't
Yeah, but
say
like,
to people.
how can you feel good about selling product like this? Yes.
Shit. But I will tell you something. Since we become vegan at home, we start to find different ways. And I will tell you, if you get aquafaba or chickpea water,
Yes.
I think the aquafaba from chickpea water is better than the aquafaba from beans, right? Beans, they have an enzyme on them that's not good for you. You know, when you get beans, I don't know in Poland if it's the same, but in Brazil you need to soak your beans at least 8 to 12 hours.
Especially with the red kidney beans.
Yes, darker the skin of the beans, you need to soak longer to get that
Extract the
yeah.
enzyme.
But to extract the most effective way, you put acidity inside. Put a lemon or lime. Because they go through the vitamin C. Because if you cook your beans straight without that, will extract the vitamins from your body. You know that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, what I'm trying to say is, if you get the chickpea, let's say, aquafaba, and you make your mayonnaise, have you made a mayonnaise with aquafaba?
No, a very traditional way of making mayo.
Same way, but in the end, you just put like a half teaspoon of turmeric, will now give flavor, half teaspoon of black salt that actually look pink, but it smells sulfur. When you blitz and you finish, tastes like egg.
So you're still using your mustard and your acidity.
Yeah, mustard goes in,
vinegar
acidity as well. Yeah, and it tastes like egg. It's fantastic. And when you go to buy mayonnaise in the shops, like for vegans, I don't understand, because it should be cheaper than actually buying eggs, because you can stretch more.
Okay, so
And you get like Hellmann's. I look and said, why they don't do Hellmann's with chickpea? It would be better. I'm not saying Hellmann's is bad, but it is. You know, like if you make like a proper mayonnaise at home, I will not take the mayonnaise with eggs. For me,
you've just lost one sponsor.
Sorry, Hellmann's. You need to do something better. But I have to say, like, for me, the hardest part when we become vegan at home, you know what it was? Eggs.
Finding the product.
No, eggs.
itself.
Dairy is fine. You can mimic anything with dairy. proteins as well, but like eggs. Oh, Lucas, I'll tell you something. Eggs kill me to not have eggs.
But did you find this, like, even in 21st century with 2022, wherever you decide to go vegan, and then suddenly from Sunday to Monday you were relaxing on the weekend, you made decision, it's Monday, I'm gonna do shopping, and suddenly from, you know, putting your shoes on, driving to shop, grabbing the basket, coming back home, and you're done for a week, you go into, oh, I have to think about what I'm gonna eat on Monday, where I'm gonna get that stuff for Monday, and what's gonna happen to Tuesday, and it's too early to think about Wednesday.
Not really. We were, before we turned vegan, let's say between brackets, we used to have animal protein just 3 times a week. We try to be healthy and eat something more, like more plant-based. We knew that. So the meat was already something treat for us. And back then as well, I was probably a CDP with a young family. You know, like that 12 years ago or so. So it was difficult to actually have meat every single day. And as well, like afterwards, like I was at work just cooking meat every single day. My specialty is sauces and meat. Okay, not true, I can do everything, you know, from desserts to starters. But that stage, my sauces and meat was my specialty. So for me it was very challenging. Not challenging, you know yourself, when you get home, you just yourself making bread every day. You get home and say, can you bake a bread? You say, fuck no, give me anything, you know, like you would eat anything. I don't know about you, that's me. If it was meat, bread, yeah, bread's a silly mistake. I would eat bread every day. It's the same with pasta. I would eat pasta every single day if my wife let me, because for me pasta, oh god, pasta, yeah. So was very challenging that way. So when we got home, we had that diet, and then one day I start to research regarding vegan food. That was about like 6-7 years ago, something like that. I don't recall now. And because the restaurant I used to run had a lot of people from Middle East, and they couldn't eat dairy from Europe because they use hennet, if I'm not mistaken, the word probably is right. That all the products you're doing with dairy, you actually use animal products. And since they are Muslims and they can't eat products like that, you need to source a different way. So it was very challenging. And I said, okay, I'll start to go vegan because it's easier than trying to find somebody can provide something that would be halal. So it would be was difficult. So I started to look after that. My wife, being a scholar, she went deep, and very, very deep.
She's done your homework.
Oh yeah, she went beyond my homework. I gave my homework and she went beyond. And I'll tell you, she's an amazing cook. Like, man, she can cook better than the chefs we have in our kitchens. Trust me, her food is really good. Really good. And I learned more about vegan with her than anywhere else. Restaurants going in, it doesn't matter. At least once a year we travel around Europe and just eat vegan. Like, it's very hard. But like, she finds some pearls. Like, we went to Amsterdam for my birthday. We went to a place called Mr. and Miss Watson. Lucas. We went there. They had like a fondant. Fondant, no. Cheese. Yeah, fondant. No.
Fondue?
Fondue. Yes. Sorry. Fondue. You couldn't say it wasn't cheese. I was like, I looked at the waiter and said, I sure there is no dairy on that.
To every dish.
Yeah. And then afterwards, she said, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We buy from that shop. We went to a shop in the middle of the town, bought tons of cheese from that place. I don't know how we managed to put in the bags and come across. Uh, Probably if the immigration stopped and said, 'Did you get any marijuana in Amsterdam?' No, no, we got cheese. You know what I mean? So it was amazing. It was very good. So it's something for me is being very good in a sense to have a family eating dairy, like vegan, because helping me to understand how we can go the next level and the flavor, how we can mimic it, even with our own products. Example, quiche for me, vegan quiche, the way Carolina makes. Lucas, next time she make quiche, I'll bring to you, and you see what I'm trying to say.
Quiche with no eggs.
The first time she made was breakfast, brunch, whatever you want to call, and I was eating. It was just after we become vegan, yeah. I said, yes, finally she gave up and she bought eggs.
Okay.
But it was so creamy, so luscious. And I asked her after the second, third bite, I said, oh, so you got eggs back? No, that's not eggs. And since then I look at, okay, thank you. So that's for me going to the plant-based part. I don't know for you. I don't know for you. So just to finish off with you, like, what inspire you and what will bring you to the next level if you want to go, like, where you want to go now
Within
with your
the bread.
bakery? Yes.
I think if the bread that I produce it's too expensive for my next door neighbor or my friend to consume because it's from the best grain or if it's from organic grain and it took certain amount of make, and with the electricity cost, let's say best bread scenario costing between 9 to 10 euro, I couldn't look at my neighbor's eyes into his eyes and say like, oh, this bread is worth 10 euro, because okay, I putting my life into it and I know like how much it would cost and what's the thinking behind this, and this is kind of like a black scenario for me that we're going into the shortcuts with the quality of the product. Like for example, even if we have organic grain, it doesn't mean it's been industrially produced.
Yes.
It doesn't mean it didn't use chemical fertilizers. It's mean that there is a legislation which allows you to use certain chemicals in it. And understanding the difference between organic product and that the organic product is not actually always the same product that was produced 60 years ago or 80 years ago on the little farm that your grandparents lived on, where they were self-sufficient, and it's not the same product. Like, I wish I could produce bread that my parents made, but I don't think I will ever reach that level, even though they were just two simple farmers somewhere in the remote village in Poland.
Southeast Poland, yeah.
I don't think if I ever reach their level with product they use, what they produce, that's my happiness. But I haven't actually used the recipe yet because I don't have the grain that I can use to produce that. So I'm like, I'm not gonna cheat your recipe because I don't have the grain to use
If you're
to do that
cheating,
recipe.
yeah. Oh my god! But no, that was lovely to hear. The passion you have for bread is beyond understanding. I need to try your bread. I saw the pictures before. That's it. But like seeing is already halfway through it, and I think it's something you need to keep working. I do understand what you're saying about. I always tell people don't touch the microphone. I'm the first one to poke the microphone. I keep saying to people like it's hard at the moment to perceive your dreams and try to go the extra mile, but don't stop because that the passion you have for bread, you grew with that. You know what you're talking about. Majority of the people I talk about and they start to talk about bread, I'll tell you, like when I talk about anything food wise, majority of the people is like if I'm talking about rock science. And I lost the person in the first 5 seconds when you start to talk, but like the way you talk about bread is what I'm here for, and what us like in Foodkast, it doesn't matter. Like that's what we're here for, to hear that passion and seeing that, and people want that. And I'll tell you, there are people who would buy. I don't mind to pay 10 euros for a loaf of bread, if I know where it come from, and if there's a history before, and then saying, look, that's what I get. That because of that, I charge you 10 euros for a loaf. I don't mind. I go to the shop across the road, literally, and I pay 6 euros or 5.50 for a loaf of bread, and I know that is not a baker. You know what I mean? Like I will not say the name of the shop here because I'm trying to look for sponsors in the future. But like what I'm trying to say is, there's a shop literally across the road. They sell you a loaf of bread for $5.
Yes, I think Marks and Spencer at the moment making loaf between 5 and 6 euro.
Yes.
Very small loaf.
Yes.
So
And
that's like considered to be supermarket VIP bread.
correct. And then, like if you taste like the ordinary ones you get normally and try those, and you look and say, wow, look at the difference. It's amazing. So hope to see your bread soon enough here. And then it was lovely to have you.
Thank you very much.
And
I feel like we talk about everything but not about the breads. Like
we
cover
spoke
a lot
about bread.
Oh yeah, we did. We touched the base.
Yeah, the basics. Like I think we should have another one with a tasting of bread and explain the depth of the bread per se, and like the structure, how it works, how the flavor works. I think that was amazing.
More technical.
Oh yes. Lukasz,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was lovely. Thank you very much. And
thank you, guys.
Guys, thank you. And as the usual, like, follow, and share. That was Foodkast.